I'm doing very well. It is my contention, Andy, that if somebody is a fundamental adherent to Sharia law, that Sharia law is more than a personal set of principles. It's a governing system. And I just read the oath of for the President of the United States. It's the only oath in the Constitution that's actually written out. And while people are focusing on the no religious test clause, which is perfectly fine, but really has nothing to do with Ben Carson, he's not preventing people from becoming president of any particular religion. He gave an opinion. But I want to go further. There's this other part of the Constitution. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Tell us a little bit about Sharia governing law.
Well, Mark, Sharia is Islam's not only governing law, but it's really its societal framework. And what I mean by that is that in the classical interpretation of Sharia, there is no separation of the religious realm from political and social life. It's all bound up together. It can't be disaggregated. And the legal code is kind of what binds that whole system together. And the idea is, the driving idea of it is to set up a caliphate where the state is an Islamic state and its role is to enforce Islamic law. In fact, it's peculiar even with respect to Islamic states to talk about the ideas of citizenship and representative government, because the responsibility of a Sharia state is fidelity to Sharia, not answering to the concerns of constituents. And the inhabitants of a Sharia state, their obligation is not to govern themselves. Their obligation is to be obedient to the state as long as the state is adherent to Sharia. So it's an entirely different animal than the idea of representative government under a constitution that actually is designed to promote an idea that's foreign to Sharia, which is the expansion of personal liberty.
So theoretically, somebody could run for president and embrace that point of view with Sharia law, and the no religious test clause would apply to that person. However, that person would not be able to faithfully execute the laws of the United States under the Constitution, and so that pledge would be meaningless. That's my point. I mean, we're arguing in theoreticals here because the media's gone nuts.
Well, yeah, and I think, Mark, there's even, something that we should look at that's even more concrete than that. And that is that when the framers designed the qualifications for President of the United States, they also included that the president needed to be a natural-born citizen. Now, they weren't saying by that naturalized citizens, or people who were born in foreign places and became Americans, could not be loyal, patriotic Americans. What they were saying was, with respect to this most important, most powerful office that they were creating, that we didn't want to be worried about foreign intrigue and ambitious foreigners taking that office. Now, that didn't mean that they weren't suitable for other offices. It just meant that with respect to this very special, very powerful office, those were things that the American people shouldn't need to concern themselves with. And I think that when you're talking about Sharia, which is in its classical, widely accepted mainstream interpretation in the Middle East in particular, which is antithetical to what the Constitution is based on, even down to the main assumption of the Constitution, which is that the people are sovereign and have a right to govern themselves irrespective of any other legal code or religious code. It seems much more sensible to me to say that somebody who is a Muslim, who is presumptively at least sympathetic to that system, if not even fully adherent to it, the case for saying a person with that background shouldn't hold the office of president is much stronger than saying, a naturalized American citizen who could be just as patriotic as any of us shouldn't be president of the United States.
So why are these positions we're taking, which are not ideological? We're looking at the Constitution, we're looking at experience, right? We're looking at what's going on today, what the framers did before. Why should these positions be controversial? Is it because journalists are stupid? Is it because they're liberal? Is it because they're playing gotcha? I mean, look, these can be tough questions, but but I don't think they want the they're not complex, but they're a little bit deeper. They don't want the answers.
Well, Mark, in 2010, I wrote a book called The Grand Jihad that you were very gracious in having me on to talk about. And the upshot of that book, and what I was trying to get across, is that Islamists and leftists work together, they collude together, and they have done that historically, and they do it every day in the United States. I think that there is an obvious sympathy for Islamists in the media and on the left and in the Democratic Party. They work together. They have, functioning relationships.
Like this group CARE.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. CARE is, you've pointed this out. You don't need me to repeat it. But, I mean, CARE was established by Muslim Brotherhood operatives in the United States because they realized Islamists go to school on us in a way that we don't go to school on them, and we should. But they realized they needed an organization with media savvy and a grasp of the law to push what they were pushing at the time, which was the Hamas agenda in the United States. The most important thing that the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States was doing from the end of the 1980s on was promoting Hamas financially, morally, and in every other way. And that was really how CARE came to be and why CARE came to be in the first place. So these people who cite CARE and don't talk about any of this history and talk about them as if they were, simply a civil rights organization and nothing more, are leaving out a lot of very relevant information that people ought to be focused on.
Isn't it amazing, though, Andy, that Andy McCarthy, these same journalists don't say to, what's the guy's name, Awad, or whatever the hell his name is, they don't say to him, tell me, sir, could you support a gay person for president? Tell me, sir, could you support an Orthodox Jew for president?
Right. Well, Mark, that is the whole reason why they came up with this theme of Islamophobia, which is really, this is a creation of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not, some condition that came up. It's a political tactic to attack the messenger when you don't want to get down to the brass tacks of talking about facts and positions. And what I have been trying to stress for a very, very long time is that in the United States, we never want to be in a position like they are in France, say, of banning the burqa or banning this or banning that would be running afoul of our constitutional principles. What I've been arguing for all these years is that if you expose Sharia, if you show the 7 or 8 key components of it that run 180 degrees opposite of what American Republican constitutional democracy is, they wouldn't be able to defend it. And then they'd be marginalized as a movement. We wouldn't be seeing them cited because they'd have no credibility.
Have you ever seen a single network TV show or cable TV show spend 60 minutes on that?
No,
isn't it amazing, since we're at war with it constantly, that they don't even expose it?
Their main tenets. This is not. There's a book called Reliance of the Traveler, which is a Sharia manual. This is not Sharia according to Andy and Mark. This is a published manual that you can buy on Amazon that's endorsed by the scholars at Al-Azhar University in Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood's American think tank that says the things that we're discussing here. It says in it that the penalty for apostasy, that is renunciation of Islam, is death. The penalty for homosexuality is death. Extramarital sex, death. This isn't me making it up. This is what they say themselves, and this is an interpretation of Islam and Sharia that's classical, that goes back centuries. And it doesn't mean every single Muslim adheres to it. Obviously, they don't. But we can't close our eyes to the fact that this is what mainstream Sharia holds. And it's not surprising that if you look at any Islamic society that's governed by Sharia on the planet, you get some or all of this. It's just a fact.
So my question to Chuck Dodd and George Stephanopoulos and all the others is this. If a candidate is running for president who will not reject Sharia law, compliance with Sharia law, should that person get elected, again, we're dealing in hypotheticals, that's what they deal in all the time, would Chuck Todd and George Stephanopoulos say that they could take the oath and faithfully execute the laws and the Constitution? The answer is no, they couldn't.
Well, they couldn't take it honestly. There's a president whose name escapes me at the moment.
Oh, yeah, right.
who took that oath Twice.
Well, you wrote another book that was great on the impeachment of Barack Obama.
Yeah, well, in our dreams, but...
Yeah, the only problem is, look how we dismiss all this stuff. Look how we allow them to cow us. Look how they cow the Republican Party. You have a man who says, I have a pen and a phone like he's Benito Mussolini, running around and changing laws and usurping the Constitution, and the Republicans just sit there. Say, we got to win the presidency. Elections matter. They just reject their own constitutional power.
Right, but if Ben Carson takes the perfectly reasonable position that we ought to be worried about people who subscribe to a belief system that is contradictory to the core of our Constitution, that we have to get our hackles all raised up about. It's really remarkable.
Andy, you're a national treasure. I've always felt this. Andy McCarthy, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, pal. Appreciate it.
All right, God bless.